For them to draft him in the third round, and reports coming out of OTAs and training camps saying that he's playing well both in early downs and in the pass game. If Michelle or White misses time, Harris is a slam dunk pick from where he's being.
Welcome back, good people, fantasy fiends, preseason lovers, whatever you call yourselves. This is part 2 of our backfield breakdown, the AFC edition. I'm your host, Waleed. With me is this guy known as Brian. What's going on, dog?
What's up, bro? What's going on, man? Yeah, preseason lovers, that's me. The best time of the year right now.
And 2 years ago, I think folks would consider that a crazy thing. But as far as DFS is concerned, it has gotten more popular by the years. It really is like the most profitable time of year. And those that are new here, those that have been with us for some time, Occupy Fantasy, we offer complete preseason information, playing time notes, rankings, lineup strategies, all for an industry low price.
Yeah, honestly, this is the most profitable time, and we have the most complete playing time information that you can find. And OccupyFantasy.com is where you can get that information. The game starts Thursday, August 1st, the Hall of Fame game, and it runs all the way through the end of preseason week 4. So hop on board if you haven't already.
So we'll start with the AFC East. And at face value, I think the team that's projected to finish worst as far as betting odds are concerned, the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, they're in a full rebuild, so it's no surprise to see them being the worst odds to win the division and I think to win the Super Bowl. But I think most people here, Waleed, expected Kenyon Drake to unanimously be the lead back, but it may have surprised some folks to see Kalen Ballage give first-team reps in training camp.
I think so, and it's still very early, so I'm not personally concerned, but if you did draft Ballage in a best ball league or you have your eyes on him, something to feel good about. But this team just looks like they'll be playing from behind often, and that just bodes well for Kenyon Drake. And surely his coach can't hate him any more than Adam Gase did.
That's true. And, every time a new coaching staff comes aboard, we think, okay, this player is definitely going to be used differently. But maybe there's something behind the scenes with Kenyon Drake. They didn't use him at Alabama as a workhorse, which is not surprising given the talent they had there. Didn't use him so far early in his career as a workhorse. Maybe that won't be the case. But like you said, he plays well in the passing game, much better than Kalen Ballage. And the Dolphins will be trailing a lot this year. So it's no surprise that he has the better fantasy outlook for 2019.
Anyone that you're excited about here, or are you just looking at these guys as bench stashes?
I do like Drake, but I do think their ADP should be a little bit closer together. Right now, it's like a 9 or 10 round difference between the two. I think Drake is much better for best ball. He will have some inconsistency from week to week.
Let's move on to a messy-ass backfield in Buffalo. I'll let you run with this because I can't get my head around it. I don't know what the front office was thinking when they got this core together, but there just seems to be no direction. It's almost like what you'd imagine the computer do on Madden, right?
Yeah, it's like, why the hell did you sign all 4 of these running backs for me? Auto sim. Yeah. So LaShawn McCoy, I think he's one of those guys that are a sneaky cut possibility at the end of camp. And I think some people around the league that are tuned in have the same feeling. Frank Gore, despite what we think about him, has been one of the most successful backs even last year as far as gaining consistent yardage goes. He was near the bottom of plays where less than 2 yards were gained or something along those lines, and near the top in plays that gained 4 more yards, which is wild considering how old he is for NFL running back terms. So he's not going away anytime soon. TJ Yeldon, he has not been getting any first-team reps, so that just says to me that he's going to be a satellite back, passing down back of sorts, which I'm not sure will get much love with Josh Allen under center. The guy I do like here is Devin Singletary. We talked about David Montgomery in the NFC episode, how great he was at breaking tackles throughout his college career. Devin Singletary was just as good, if not better. And the big knock on him is his athletic testing, his athletic profile. Does he have enough athleticism to succeed at this level? He has the vision and the tackle breaking ability to do so. And because he's already earning first team reps and he's learning from guys like Frank Gore and LaShawn McCoy, I think he's easily the target from this backfield because he's going so late in drafts that you're not losing much if he doesn't pan out.
Yeah, I really don't care for this backfield unless I'm in like a 25, 30 round draft, which I guess maybe in best ball you might be, but we'll get more clarity as things progress. And there may be weeks where, let's say, LaShawn McCoy's not there. We have a better idea of who's getting the carries for DFS purposes. But as far as like redraft leagues are concerned, I don't want to touch this backfield with a 20-foot pole.
That's probably fair, I think.
So a backfield that can be oftentimes confusing, but way more productive, the New England Patriots.
Yeah, they seem to always, it's not even seem, they do actually finish top 3 in fantasy running back scoring as a team pretty consistently over the past 10 years or so. And a lot of people always end up, thinking about the fact that it's so difficult to figure out which running back you want to own here. But it seems pretty simple to me this year. So Sonny Michel, second-year running back, had some knee issues last year. He was known to have knee issues when he was drafted. Had his second scope in 2 years earlier this spring and started the training camp on the PUP list. He has since been activated, but I think we have to be cautious, if not downright scared, the condition of his knee. It's so young in his career and already having knee issues. James White, we know what he'll do. Without Gronk, could see even more action in the passing game this year. But the guy I really like and I think could be a league winner similar to Darrell Henderson that we talked about in the NFC episode, maybe not to the same level as Henderson, but Damian Harris. For them to draft him in the 3rd round and reports coming out of OTAs and training camps saying that he's playing well both in early downs and in the pass game. If Michel or White misses time, Harris is a slam dunk pick from where he's being drafted.
And I get the concern with Michel long term, but especially since he's full systems go in training camp, I think there's a little bit of an overreaction. The fact that the Patriots rode in the postseason. I mean, look at wild card or first round playoff game against the Chargers. He had 24 carries. AFC Championship game, he had 29 carries. Super Sunday, he had 18 carries. So it seemed as the year progressed, he actually became a feature back, and I think people are overreacting. I still think going into the season, he's going to be their number 1 back, and sure, he can get hurt, but the upside seems to be pretty massive.
I will agree with you there. And I don't think it's out of the question to take both of these guys if you're drafting. And Michel, we saw his ADP drop some once he was announced on the PUP list. But once he returned to practice, it has bumped back up some. And he has some positive touchdown regression coming his way. The regular season, he should have scored 3 or 4 more touchdowns based on his actual opportunity. And we saw in the playoffs when he scored, 6 or 7 touchdowns, including that very important to me, single touchdown in the Super Bowl. So I agree with you, man. The upside is there, and he could have a massive year if he does stay healthy for all 16 games. And you're probably right. There probably is a bit of an overreaction there.
So what are your thoughts on the Jets? Le'Veon Bell, he looks all systems go. He actually apologizes fantasy owners yesterday, and he's just been super energetic this training camp. Everyone's expecting a big year from him. But there are a couple of guys that look like they can cut into some passing down work between Ty Montgomery, Bilal Powell. Are they even on your radar, or do you look at Le'Veon Bell as someone who's going to get feature back touches?
Yeah, he said he can handle up to 500 touches this year. So whether or not he gets that is a completely different story. But I think there's no reason to fear Bilal Powell or Ty Montgomery taking any of Bell's work. They paid him the contract. They've talked about using him. I think he's probably one of the safest running back picks you can find.
and he's going around in that second tier of running backs with DJ and Le'Veon, right? Those two kind of get grouped together. Who do you like more?
Probably DJ, just because of I think the wave, this storm of the air raid offense that Cliff Kingsbury's bringing. I think that could really take the league by storm, and as a result, DJ could have some massive games.
On to Le'Veon's old team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. James Conner delivered big if he got him with a late round draft pick last year. And now it looks like he's going to be the number one guy, although we know, I mean, he's obviously the number one guy, but we know how they feel about Jalen Samuels. So if it wasn't for Connor's production in the passing game, he would have fell off towards the end of last year. Are you a little worried?
Definitely a little concerned, and especially reading some of his comments saying that, Jalen's going to be involved. We're going to have some two-back sets, which I think is smart, considering they lost both Le'Veon and Antonio Brown. And I do think that's the primary reason that he's dropped into that second round range in ADP. So I think there's certainly concern there, but he probably is in line for a good amount of touches. And Jalen Samuels is just the guy we saw him produce when he took the field when Connor hurt his ankle last year. Another just one of those priority backup running backs that could win you the league if he starts a handful of games.
And Connor's season was like a tale of two halves. First 8 games, I think he had 5 games in which he had more than 20 carries. The last 6, the last 5 games, he didn't see more than 15 carries. If you had to find that sweet spot, how many carries a game do you see him averaging?
Yeah, probably in that 17 to 20 range, I think. Okay. I know his ankle coming back late in the year was certainly an issue. So assuming he's back to full health, high ankle sprains are like literally one of the worst injuries for running backs. So I think we see him settle 17 to 20, 4 to 5 passing targets a game, which is basically what there's not much more you can ask for out of a second round running back.
The Baltimore Ravens, they picked up Mark Ingram. I think one of the more underrated signings for fantasy football purposes.
Yeah, I want to get your opinion here because, you and I both had strong feelings about Ingram's role in New Orleans. And, it's two sides of the coin here. Very different opinions, at least on Twitter from what I've seen about drafting Ingram in season-long drafts. He should be close to a 3-down player in a league that in an offense that could run the ball a ton and should run the ball a ton. I guess my only question is, does Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, do they cut into this role?
I wish I knew, man. I really do, because in a vacuum, if Mark Ingram was to get the workload I think he deserves, you're looking at easy an RB1, but you're talking about someone who's stepping into a environment where they've been always throwing guys around, right? And you look at even someone like Kenneth Dixon, who, despite his inability to stay on the field when he has gotten opportunities, he's put up some impressive performances. Edwards, it's just he is the type of back I would certainly invest in as far as your number 2 or flex option, given the upside. But at the same time, you just don't know the usage right now.
I mean, there's a wide range of outcomes here. He has a really low floor and I think a decently high ceiling. So it really is going to depend on the rest of your roster makeup. And for DFS purposes, I mean, he's a perfect tournament running back.
What are your thoughts about him in the passing game? We knew what he did in New Orleans, but with Lamar Jackson, is he going to get more checkdowns? Is the offense obviously going to be less creative with how they get him the ball?
Potentially, but I do like that Greg Roman has taken over play calling duties there. We won't see a 60, 70 catch season from Ingram, but I do think, honestly, I think 40, 50 receptions is possible. I mean, we saw LaShawn McCoy. He was a different player, but he had, I think, 50-some receptions in one of his big years in Roman's offense. So I do think the upside is there, and it's really sneaky upside that not many people are talking about.
Nick Chubb will look to continue his solid start to his young career, entering his second season. He should be the feature back for the first 10 games, We know the Kareem Hunt situation. Duke Johnson, he's kind of like, who knows what's going to happen there. He could either have a role as a third down passing back, or he could be on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by next week.
That is true. He certainly could, but that would be a nice fit, actually, right?
I think so. It would end my hopes of.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta like Chubb. Hunt is the wild card here. He's missing what, 8 games, right?
Yeah, I think 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Either way, 8 to 10 games, a ton of games this season. He was in a bar incident, I think, this offseason. Nothing's going to come of it, but like you have to think about 8. Is it 8?
It's 8 games, which I think does make a big difference for fantasy purposes.
It does. So, I mean, we know his talent. I just don't know. It's hard to tell what's going to happen when he comes back. I mean, Chubb could be injured for all we know. Hunt is the type of guy, though, where he's being drafted. He's like Jalen Samuels and those other guys we've talked about, that if he's starting end of the year, I mean, you have a running back 1. So
for sure. I was just so impressed with Nick Chubb, what he did his rookie year, and under 200 carries. He pretty much ran for 1,000 yards. This offense is only going to be significantly better. Like, they're going to be a lot better with Odell. It's the opportunity is massive. There's no Carlos Hyde vulturing goal line carries. I mean, this is a guy that had 10 touchdowns last year. So he is, in my eyes, someone that folks are a little cautious about due to the potential return of Kareem Hunt. But if he's doing what he did for the first 8, like if he's doing what he did last year for the first 8 games this year, I don't see him even close to losing this job.
No, he'll be too good to take off the field. I mean, he was Pro Football Focus's #1 grade at running back at some stretch last year towards the end of the season. So if he is doing that kind of work, they're not going to take him off the field for Hunt. So
a team that should be trailing early and often, especially now with the recent loss of A.J. Green for a few weeks, Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Mixon seems to be the one bright spot, and it looks like he should be a feature back this year.
Yeah, a buddy texted me. He was trying to trade for Joe Mixon in a dynasty league, and he was thinking, is it a fluke? Honestly, I think last year was the worst case scenario for Joe Mixon. He finished as like a top 8 running back in fantasy, yet hurt his knee, missed a couple of games, some injuries along the O-line, terrible scheme. Dalton missed a good chunk of games. A.J. Green missed a bunch of games. Like, it couldn't get much worse. Now at least Zach Taylor's coming in with a new scheme. O-line's a little better, but I don't see it being much worse for Mixon, and he was already great. So I think where he's being drafted in season long is a pretty good pick.
Completely. I couldn't agree more. He was a RB1 pretty much for the whole season. He missed some time kind of in the early part when he got hurt in that Thursday night game against the Ravens. But you're looking at someone who he averaged 5 yards a carry. I think he had 9 total touchdowns, produced close to 1,500 total yards. So he does have that 2,000 total yard upside, which is great in the early second round.
Right. And this was the kind of guy that is being grouped in with Todd Gurley, saying, does he have workhorse upside? Does he have question marks? And sure, everyone's going to have question marks in the second round. But, I mean, give me Mixon all day over Gurley.
The Jacksonville Jaguars, Lenny Fournette, man, he had high expectations after his rookie campaign. Last year, in his own words, was very humbling as he dealt with injuries. Number one, let me ask you this. We talk about players being injury prone, especially when it comes to maybe like soft tissue injuries. We know that that's not necessarily something we're able to project, but do you have any concerns about his durability?
There's certainly some, but because he's had a lot of injuries to the same area, that foot. But I think last year was the hamstring that cost him. Yeah. So once again, I'm not that concerned. I'm not discounting him. I think he has huge upside. The 2 seasons he's played so far, he's been on 40, 50 catch paces, which you wouldn't think about given how his running style. But again, massive upside. If he stays healthy for 16 games, if John DeFilippo, the new offensive coordinator, is any upgrade over Nathaniel Hackett, and Nick Foles can provide some stability at quarterback, again, he's another, I dare to say it, league winner type running back if he stays healthy in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I just got him in the 3rd in a best ball league, and he's my first running back drafted. it's a best ball league, right? So hit or miss. But
Yeah.
um, do you have any inkling on who the backup is going to be? Or I know they have Thomas Rawls, Alfred Blue they picked up. They have a rookie, Raquel Armstead. Any any feeling here?
I know a lot of people like Armstead, but he started camp slow with a hamstring injury, and I actually think that it's written in the NFL rules somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but it's mandated that Alfred Blue must get 20 or more touches in a December football game. So just plan for that. I imagine that'll be the case this December too. So just given his invincibility, I do think Alfred Blue ends up the backup.
Derrick Henry, how amazing was he the second half of last year?
Yeah, that just the vision of that 99-yard touchdown run is fresh in everyone's minds.
Unreal, but he's dealing with an injury right now. The Titans are being pretty unclear about it, but it doesn't appear to be too serious, and they do expect him back in a few weeks. Does this impact, when teams aren't really being specific with what's going on, does this impact your perception of how bad it could be?
I think you just have to realize who you're dealing with, right? Like, you look at the Patriots, you look at Matt Patricia and the Lions, Mike Vrabel, another New England disciple, and the Titans. They're just going to be tight-lipped with information, even if it's not going to give them a competitive advantage. Like the Lions, for instance, refuse to name any like playing time information in preseason, which is like, okay, guys, come on, you're not getting any advantage here. So I don't know. For me, I like the idea of the back missing the preseason. Stay healthy for the regular season when we need you.
Dion Lewis, he was a disappointment last year. I think most people expected him to just have more of an impact. He's someone that's pretty much going like undiscussed right now. Is that the way it should be, or could he potentially be someone that takes a step forward? He can't get any worse.
Yeah, I mean, I like drafting him where he's being drafted. If Henry misses some games or they fall behind in some games, then yeah, I mean, Lewis will benefit. So I don't mind him as one of those last year, last round type running backs to draft.
The Texans, is there a worse offensive line in football right now?
No, no, no.
So how do you even see upside from this backfield? Because I do like both guys, both Foreman and Lamar Miller. You know me, I won't draft him this year because I'm so over this Texans offensive line. But Lamar Miller, he did put together some big games, including one game which he had like a 99-yard touchdown run on Monday Night Football. I mean, are the expectations more of the same from last year?
I think so. Yeah, they're talking up Deontay Foreman a bit in camp. He's still returning from that Achilles injury. I don't know, man. I'm staying away from it. Maybe if they trade for Trent Williams, which I guess is an outside possibility,
Yeah.
maybe. But no, I just want all the pieces in that passing game instead.
Yeah, I feel the same. And it's one of those things when you're drafting and you're in like the 7th or 8th round of the best ball league and you see these guys available where you're like, well, someone's got to do the work, right? And someone's got to get the carries. But like on a week to week basis, I feel like you get burned so often just hoping one of these guys delivers. So me personally, I'm staying away. Foreman might be worth a flyer here, but upside is just so limited, even best case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather take like Royce Freeman or Darius Geis or Henderson, Damian Harris, those guys that can actually be running back ones, where neither one of these guys, that's going to be the case.
Moving on to a backfield that did get a lot of production last year, Marlon Mack. He was fun to follow. Like he really took kind of the reins as the de facto starter, and he was impressive year round.
Yeah, you got to like what he's done, and with the Colts offensive line having continuity, all 5 starters returning, defense likely improving, Colts projected to be one of the higher scoring and better teams in the league. Marlon Mack makes a ton of sense as a fantasy running back. He won't get a ton of third downs with Nyheim Hines there, but I think his touchdown potential is massive.
Now, we know kind of the third down back situation, like you said, with Himes, but can you see him get more involved in the passing game, or is that like upside limited? He's had 38 total catches in his first 2 seasons. Is he kind of like that Chris Carson type of guy where you're going to have to hope the production comes from the ground?
Probably so. Although I do like Frank Reich. He's one of the smarter, more analytically driven offensive play callers. And we know running back passes on first and second down are pretty good from an analytics standpoint. So I think that's where Mac will have to do his damage. He won't be catching passes on third down, but he could make up for it in those early downs, especially early in games.
Yeah, it's simple math. If you expect the Colts to be good, which the betting odds are in favor of that happening, they'll be up. They'll have to, ice second half leads, and Marlon Mack will be the guy that they'll be doing it with, and he'll be the red zone guy. I think last year he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total games with 16 or more carries, and I think that can only increase. I have him down for about 250 total this year, which would be a pretty significant step up. He did miss 4 games last year, not to mention.
Yeah, I don't think that number is outrageous at all. That's probably a pretty good projection.
AFC West time, the Kansas City Chiefs, Damian Williams, who I think is one of the most polarizing players in fantasy football right now. The upside all the way down to what people look at as his floor.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if he's healthy, what's the condition that he fails? Is there one? I don't know. I mean, in this offense, in this scheme, with his ability, I think he's worth where he's being drafted, and he could very conceivably finish top 5. I know a lot of people are worried that he hasn't done it before, but a lot of production in fantasy football is its ability plus opportunity, and he's got that opportunity. So,
no, you hit the nail on the head with opportunity, because the people that are discounting him are looking at things like, well, he'd been in the league for 5 years before. He spent 4 of those seasons on the Dolphins with Adam Case,
yeah,
in a backfield where it was hard enough to get on the field, but we knew about him a couple years ago. He would find ways to make an impact in the passing game, and now he's set up for at least 200 total touches. I don't see how he goes under that mark at this point. He was effective last year as a runner, not just in the passing game, and he's on arguably the best offense in the league. So, and he's being drafted in 3rd round right now.
I guess it depends. I've seen if you're doing best ball drafts on draft, he'll go late first to mid second anywhere. But casual leagues, he can definitely drop to the 3rd. And I think the key question here is who's going to back him up, because if he does get injured or fail, I mean, this is a high volume, high fantasy potential situation. And I see a lot of people drafting Carlos Hyde. I'm telling you, I have a strong feeling here. The guy you want is Darwin Thompson. Matt Waldman, the guy we like to look at for scouting reports over at Football Guys, had Darwin Thompson as an underrated player coming into the draft and said if he goes to the right situation, he can really shine. And then he goes to literally one of the best offenses for running back. And he's already lighting it up in camp, according to reports. Hyde's kind of slowing down. I mean, Darwin Thompson's a guy that you can stash literally in the last round or just watch him on the waiver wire. But, anytime you can get a dynamic back in an Andy Reid offense, you have to jump at that opportunity.
Last thing to note here, Damian Williams did miss some of camp with a hamstring issue. I know these things are just what we hate to see. What is how do you assess these sort of things when, let's say, you have a draft in the middle of August and someone's dealing with the hamstring injury, they're missing camp? How much weight can you possibly put into that?
If it's early in camp, I'm okay with it. In fact, it was the Chiefs head trainer, I think that was his title. He tweeted pretty recently saying that players' dehydration levels are at the lowest on day 3 of camp, and then it kind of normalizes and stabilizes by day 11. And during that time when you're dehydrated, that's when you normally see a lot of these soft tissue injuries. So we see that with Damian Williams. We've seen that with a bunch of these other guys around the league happening during this time, and they're being cautious with it. Lets me know that it's probably not that serious. And so if that's the case, I'm okay with drafting him.
Philip Lindsay was certainly a league winner last year, man. What a story.
Yeah, I mean, you got to like those kind of stories, right? The guy comes in undrafted, works his ass off, blows up in the preseason. We loved playing him in preseason DFS. And then he goes out and takes the starting job. So they're going to use him more of a passing role this year, but it sounds like they're going to be more 50-50 with Royce Freeman. Devontae Booker is going to be the odd man out here. The other thing to watch is they had Theo Riddick in for a physical, and he could come in and play. If that's the case, that cuts Philip Lindsay's potential a little bit.
No, and that's one thing I really have my eyes on where Theo Riddick is going to go, believe it or not, because that could really impact someone's third down passing role. Philip Lindsay, he kind of reminded me of like Alfred Morris his rookie year, right? When he just came in and took the team by storm. It seems like folks are expecting some regression and for Royce Freeman to just be more involved. What's your gut on how this backfield breaks down? Like right now, if you had to give me a prototypical game in which the Broncos are competitive for 4 quarters, how are those carries split and how are those receptions split?
Yeah, I think Lindsay gets, assuming Riddick doesn't sign, Lindsay gets 100% of the running back receptions. Maybe Freeman gets 1 or 2 here and there. But I do think Freeman gets the carries and the red zone work probably 60-40, 70-30. He didn't perform well last year. He had a high ankle sprain, like we talked about before, being a devastating injury for a running back. He struggled after sustaining that injury. They're going to a more wide zone scheme this year, which apparently is really good for his running style. So, yeah, I think Freeman takes over the majority of the carries. But as we know, targets are way more important to a running back's fantasy value. So it's not inconceivable that Lindsay ends up outscoring him in fantasy.
No, for sure. And the last thing to consider here, Freeman was a 3rd-round pick for them, right? So they're not ready to give up on him. I expect him to be involved, but like you said, the opportunity in the pass game with Captain Checkdown, who we hope is going to be the starting quarterback, should give Lindsay a big boost. The biggest story as far as running backs and just how things are going to shake out so far in this month of July has been the holdout of Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, it sounds pretty serious, right? He doesn't have a ton of leverage, it sounds like. I'm not going to pretend to be a contract or a negotiating holdout expert. So I think you dock Melvin Gordon a bit in your redraft leagues. Think of the chance of him missing 6 to 10 games. Mm-hmm. And you have to take shots on Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson just because of the upside that they bring at the points in which they're being drafted in fantasy leagues.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, you're not going to take O.J. Simpson's advice, who says that you got to pay both Melvin and Ezekiel Elliott. I don't know why he's getting fantasy football press, but apparently he's now like, he has more voices more ears than we do.
Yeah, so go figure.
But no, seriously, Melvin Gordon is going to ring a lot of alarm bells given the Le'Veon Bell situation. Folks were burned by that. I think going into Bell's holdout, given what he did the year before, no one was expecting it to pan out how the way it did. People were thinking, okay, worst case, he comes back week 4, week 5 at some point, right? But he held out the whole season. Boy, that just seems so much more real now that it's been done.
And especially him referencing Le'Veon Bell multiple times, in his reason for holding out. So, yeah, I mean, this definitely could happen. And I'm certainly more concerned about Melvin than I am Zeke. Like I said, Eckler grades out by any metric you look at as one of the top running backs in the league on a per-touch basis. So I think you have to like him. His ADP's moved up into like the 7th, 8th round, which is worth a shot, right? If you can get a running back 1 potentially that late, it's worth swinging for the fences. And it's not like Eckler is going to be useless if Gordon returns, right? You could still use Eckler as a flex. He gets enough touches to make it worthwhile. Justin Jackson's the guy that would be hurt tremendously if Gordon does sign a deal. But, he's being drafted 4 or 5 rounds later, maybe later in casual leagues. So I like taking both of those guys where they're being drafted. And Gordon probably for me would have to fall to the 3rd round just because he could miss games, but also he has some regression in the negative column coming his way. So it's not like he's even that great of a pick where he was being drafted in the first place.
I'll be real. Maybe I'm risk averse in this sense, but I'm just staying away from him until we get some real insight. And it has to come from him, not just, sources like, hey, I'll be back, because it's just the cost of spending a 3rd round pick on him if he does miss 8-10 weeks is just massive. And Not for me, man.
No, I mean you can get guys with similar upside at the same spot with way, way less downside. So I'm with you there. You've kind of talked me into avoiding him completely.
And the last team we'll talk about, the Oakland Raiders. Josh Jacobs, high expectations, man. In a rookie class full of a lot of backs we expect to be fantasy relevant, is he the one that is front runner?
I think he has to be, right? If you had to place a bet for most fantasy points scored by a running back this year by a rookie, well, I would bet on Henderson. But I think Jacobs is in the best spot for sure. The 3-down workhorse, not much competition behind him. They drafted him in the first round. It just makes a ton of sense. So, yeah, I think, Josh Jacobs, where he's being drafted,
And
fourth round or so, like definitely a guy that I don't think has much downside.
Gruden told him, we expect you to win Rookie of the Year. So
There you go.
are you putting any weight into just how John Gruden feels about him? Or is that just
I mean, if we put weight into how John Gruden feels about people, then we'd be drafting Nathan Peterman too.
I heard that today. I was thinking, wouldn't that be quite the redemption story though, if like Nate Peterman came in, somehow led the Raiders to a postseason berth behind John Gruden to Antonio Brown? Like that would be the wackiest thing I think he could draw up this year.
Definitely an ESPN 30 for 30.
Well, that about wraps it up. Unless you have any closing thoughts on Jalen Richard, who's I think like anti-vaccination or something.
So he's
Doug Martin, DeAndre Washington.
Nah, I'm good. Just give me Josh Jacobs or bust.
Sweet deal. So awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. This has been fun just covering these backfields. Of course, a lot is going to change, not just throughout the regular season, but throughout preseason, unfortunate injuries, folks stepping up in preseason, winning jobs, and also signings. Keep an eye out for where Theo Riddick goes. But that wraps it up here for us. We'll be back with you guys shortly with some more content. In the meantime, give us a follow at Occupy Fantasy if you haven't. And thanks for joining us.